government forcing ethnic Uyghurs, the Muslim minority in China, into train cars in the western part of the country. You can see that they're blindfolded. You can see their hands are tied behind their backs. China's government has been cracking down on the Uyghurs. It's been sending them by the hundreds of thousands to re-education camps. It's been forcing them to work as slave labor in factories. In fact, there's a decent chance that the coronavirus face mask you wore at the grocery store today, or the Nike tennis shoes on your feet right now, were made by an enslaved Uyghur. The BBC recently asked the Chinese ambassador about this footage. Here's how it went.
Can I ask you why people are kneeling, blindfolded and shaven and being led to trains in modern China? What is going on there?
I do not know where you get this videotape. You know, sometimes you have a transfer of prisons and prisoners, you know, in any country.
But just what is happening here, Ambassador?
I do not know where did you get these video clips.
These have been going around the world. They've been authenticated by Western intelligence agencies.
Gordon Chang is a senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute. He's the author of the book, The Coming Collapse of China. Can't come too soon. Gordon Chang joins us now. Gordon, thanks so much for coming on. So first, to the factual part of the story, what were we looking at exactly in that video?
We were looking at scenes from August 2018 in what the Chinese call Xinjiang and what the local inhabitants call East Turkestan. It is believed, Tucker, that this is video shot by a Chinese government drone, and this footage was leaked to the international community.
And are you convinced this is an unusual event? Does this represent the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghurs?
This video shows scenes which are not unusual. An Australian nonpartisan think tank, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, in March said that there are about 80,000 Uyghurs and others who have been transported around China and forced to work for international brands. They named 83 of them. 2 of them were Nike and Apple.
So Nike and Apple are two of they're not American companies, so they often pose as such. They're multinationals, owned by shareholders. But we consider them American companies. I don't ever hear anybody on the left criticize either one of those companies for their labor practices. Why?
You know, this is just inexplicable because, for instance, Nike, through a long-term supplier, a supplier has had a relationship with for more than 3 decades, have been using hundreds of Uyghur women in conditions that can only be described as slave labor. And we have heard from both the Secretary of State and the Attorney General about the practices of American companies in China. The Secretary of State actually talked about modern human slavery, and he's absolutely right about that. What we are seeing are horrific practices on the part of American companies.
So-called American companies. I mean, you do see the irony, though, that Nike is the first company, and Apple, too, to lecture the United States about its original sin, which is slavery. They're right about that. But now we learn that they're benefiting from modern-day slavery, and nobody says anything. How rich is that?
This is just unbelievable, Tucker, because as you say, Nike is taking the lead in lecturing the American people about racism, and yet in China, it is using a racial minority as slaves to manufacture sneakers. And we have heard denials from Nike, but those denials don't stand up. There's a lot of Washington Post reporting from February and March of this year, which shows that Nike's denials are indeed false. Remember, this is a long-term supplier of Nike. They had to know what was going on. And so this is basically Nike using slavery and material aiding the Chinese government in this horrific program of taking Uyghurs and others and transporting them around the country for labor purposes.
Shocking. Gordon Chang, thank you for that.
Thanks, Tucker.
So liberals used to tell you a lot about income inequality. Now that income inequality is accelerated,